Philadelphia, Eagles fans, NFL. Sometimes the most dangerous stories in this league don't start with a loud headline or a flashy press conference. They start quietly. They start as a whisper, a backstage idea, something that at first sounds crazy, something you hear and immediately think, there's no way. But the more you sit with it, the more you listen, the more that idea starts to bother you. And when it bothers you, it's usually because it's touching something real, something deep, something that could change the direction of an entire franchise. And for Eagles fans, especially those who've been around for a long time, who've lived through multiple eras, multiple quarterbacks, big promises, and big disappointments, those whispers always trigger a warning bell. Because history has taught us this: in the NFL, the moves that matter most aren't always the loud ones. A lot of times they start as speculation, as a what if, as a simple question thrown into the air. There's a very thin line between madness and vision, between a reckless idea and a genius move, and that's exactly where today's story lives, on that line. At first, it feels unlikely, almost ridiculous, but the more you hear the reasoning behind it, the more it starts to make sense. Not completely, but enough to create discomfort, enough to spark debate, enough to make you stop and think. Because this story isn't just about a name, it's not just about a trade, it's about identity, it's about planning, it's about fear of the future and doubt about the present. And more than anything else, it's about how much the Philadelphia Eagles truly trust the path they're on right now. Now, slowly, we can start pulling back the curtain. Over the last few days, a trade idea started making the rounds that put the Eagles right in the middle of an unexpected conversation. A bold suggestion involving a young quarterback, extremely athletic, drafted high, full of raw talent, but still unproven at the NFL level. That name is Anthony Richardson, currently with the Indianapolis Colts. The idea itself is simple, but the implications are explosive. What if the Philadelphia Eagles tried to trade for Anthony Richardson, not to replace anyone immediately, not to hand him the starting job, but as a long-term project, a developmental play, a quiet insurance policy that, in the NFL, can turn into Plan A a lot faster than fans like to admit? And this is where things start to get really interesting. Anthony Richardson entered the league with massive expectations. Big frame, powerful arm, elite athleticism, the kind of physical profile that makes front offices fall in love. You look at him and immediately understand why teams dream big. But the NFL is brutal to raw projects, and since arriving in Indianapolis, Richardson has dealt with injuries, inconsistency, lack of continuity, and a development curve that's been slower than expected. On the other side, the Philadelphia Eagles appear stable at the most important position in sports, a team that recently played in the Super Bowl, a team that invested heavily, a team with a clear offensive identity. But at the same time, there are quiet questions lingering, questions about how long this window stays open, questions about how sustainable the current formula really is. And that's exactly where this trade idea comes from. It's not because the Eagles desperately need a quarterback right now. It's because in the modern NFL, smart teams don't wait for a crisis. They get ahead of it. They explore scenarios. They evaluate risk before it becomes a real problem. Right now, Anthony Richardson isn't untouchable in Indianapolis. The Colts invested in him. They believe in the talent, but they also know development isn't linear. And when a young quarterback hasn't proven consistency yet, the market always pays attention. There's always someone willing to bet on upside. And there are very few places in this league better suited to develop an athletic quarterback than Philadelphia. Think about it for a second. A strong offensive line, an offense designed to use quarterback mobility, a roster that doesn't ask the quarterback to carry everything. A veteran locker room, a coaching staff that knows how to adapt schemes to talent. For a player like Anthony Richardson, that sounds like an ideal environment to grow without overwhelming pressure. But of course, nothing happens in a vacuum. What would it cost? Draft picks? Maybe a mid-round pick. Maybe something conditional. Not franchise-breaking, not reckless, just enough to show commitment. the kind of calculated gamble the Eagles have made before at other positions, when they saw value where others saw doubt. And this is where things get uncomfortable for fans. What does a move like this say about the Eagles' true confidence in their present? Because even if Richardson is framed as a project, as depth, as a future option, every fan knows this truth: backup quarterbacks don't stay backups forever. All it takes is a rough stretch, one injury, one unexpected turn, and that creates tension. For some fans, even talking about this trade feels like betrayal, like doubt, like a quiet message that maybe the front office isn't fully convinced the current path guarantees championships long term. But history tells us something else too. Teams that refuse to think about the future usually pay for it, and they pay a heavy price. How many franchises stayed locked into one plan for too long? How many waited until it was too late? How many watched their window close because they were afraid to look ungrateful or impatient? Anthony Richardson represents risk, there's no denying that. But he also represents upside, massive upside, the kind of ceiling that can change games by itself. And the Eagles have never been afraid of raw talent when they believe in the environment they've built. Still, nothing about this is simple. There are medical concerns. There are questions about decision-making, about accuracy, about mental development, about confidence. All of that matters. All of it goes into the evaluation. And that's why this story sparks so much debate, not because a trade is imminent, but because it exposes a conversation that probably already exists behind closed doors around the league. This will make even more sense in a moment. The Eagles are a franchise that thinks in windows, in cycles, in sustainability. It's not just about next Sunday, it's about the next 3, 4, 5 years. And when you look at the quarterback position through that lens, the question changes. It's no longer who's playing today, it becomes who keeps us stable tomorrow. In that context, Anthony Richardson wouldn't be an immediate threat. He'd be a quiet bet, a move that only makes noise if it fails, or if it works way better than anyone expects. And that brings us to the core truth of the NFL. This league runs on fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of falling behind, fear of missing the moment, and sometimes the biggest mistake is doing nothing when the opportunity is there. This trade might never happen. It could remain purely theoretical, but the fact that it's being discussed tells us a lot about where the Philadelphia Eagles are right now. A strong team, a competitive team, but a team that understands nothing in the NFL lasts forever. So before we wrap this up, there's one uncomfortable question that has to be asked. If Anthony Richardson were available at a reasonable price, would you make that trade, knowing that sooner or later it would put real pressure on the Eagles' starting quarterback? Think about that carefully, because your answer says a lot about how you see the present and the future of this franchise. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your opinion in the comments because your voice keeps this conversation alive. Hit the like button so this video reaches more Eagles fans, and subscribe to the channel because that support keeps this space independent, active, and focused on people who truly care about this team. Around here, the conversation never stops.